Well, hello, good evening and welcome. How the devil are you? Dave Coplin here, back again with another Remote Schooling SOS live stream. Number 4, thank you very much. Where does all the time go? So I hope you're all keeping warm. I hope you're not buried under meters of snow. I guess some of you are if you're up in the north or out on the east. It's great to have you with us. You'll remember that we're here every week to try and help with any of the challenges that you face at home with remote schooling. So whether that's challenges around parenting, it's challenges around education, challenges around technology, that's what we're here for. We're talking about the hardware, the software, the remote schooling top tips, the parenting top tips. That's exactly why we're here. Don't forget you can send your questions in to us at info@parentzone.org.uk or hashtag remote school SOS and the team will be on them. Or even better still, if you're with us live tonight, you can join us on the live stream and send your questions in on the live chat. So let's meet our co-host. How are you doing, Vicky? How's your week been?
Do you know, it's been a really good week and it's very nice to be here with you. 4 weeks in, that means that we can officially call this a season now, Dave.
I told you.
Yeah, I think we're there. And do you know, it's been such a good week. One of the things we did this week was an international assembly delivered remotely with kids in America and kids in the UK. And it just reminded me that actually technology can be fantastic to connect people. So it's feeling like a really good week.
Oh, that must have been an amazing experience. How did the kids sort of react to that? How did that go?
They absolutely loved it. We had a school in Pennsylvania and we had 10 schools in the UK and they had fun together. They were interacting live in the chat and just really engaging the moment. And it's something that we could never, ever have done face to face. It wouldn't have been possible. So it was just a reminder that actually you can make special moments happen even if you can't do them face to face.
No, exactly. And when you think about the world that those kids are going to inherit, you know, when they leave education and head out into the world, it's so wonderful. I love that when technology makes the world a little bit smaller like that, brings the connection. It's just a great example of the power of what we can do. So are you ready?
It certainly is.
For this week, Vicky?
I am really ready. In fact, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie to you, Dave. I have taken you at your word. I've abandoned the paper. I see you've still got your paper running order sitting there on your podium, but I've abandoned it and I'm doing it on a tablet this evening. So I'm really got the whole tech set up tonight. So if anything goes wrong, Dave, I'm going to blame you.
Yeah, no, well, that's fine. But you could have told me. Now I look like an idiot, don't I? You know, all this like, don't print anything out. Yeah, thanks for that. So next week, I'm telling you, I'm going to have it like laser printed on the inside of my eyelid. I'll show you. Yeah. Coming up on today's show, the bulk of today's show is going to be talking about family settings. And we're really asking the question, whether they really work or not, whether they're worth all of the effort, what are the things that you can do, what are the things you need to know as a parent when thinking about those. I've got some toys to show you, some peripherals that I think will make a difference with remote schooling. And then, as always, we'll be doing our quickfire question round at the end for the questions that have been submitted by parents. So let's jump straight into our main topic, Vicky. See, it's actually worse than that, Vicky, because I have to print 2 copies out because, you know, I have got Studio 1 and Studio 2 to think about. And before you write in, viewers, let's just say Studio 1 is the front of our front room and Studio 2 is the back of our front room. So, you know, this is a rock and roll lifestyle that we lead. And on that
you don't have to worry about your tablet going to sleep, do you? That's my anxiety.
No, exactly. That's true. So we are talking about family safety settings, which has long been a really contentious topic, hasn't it, Vicky? For a number of reasons. Contentious with parents, contentious with tech companies, contentious with government and regulation and what we need to do. And frankly, you know, even as a technical parent, it's almost unfathomable to try and figure out what's best and what's right to do.
That is so true. And you know that I've been quite excited about this evening chatting to you about this subject because it is so complicated and you're talking about different controls for different devices and controls that do different things and you don't really know what they're going to do. And to have you talk us through them, I've got all the questions that pose about these blithering controls. I'm really excited about you explaining them to us. But obviously the hat that I always wear is that the controls can only do so much. So, you know, I caveat all of this with, in the end, it's not going to be about the controls. It is really about the parenting.
And that for me, Vicky, is the nub of the debate, I think, or the discussion that I'd like to have with you, because I think there's always this perception of the tech can do anything, and you know, it's just really easy to just get the tech to do it. And I know sometimes that's what parents would like, and I know it's sometimes what the government expects. But as a technologist, let me tell you, it's never that simple. I should point out that one of the reasons we are having this conversation this week is, of course, it was Safer Internet Day on Tuesday, which, you know, I sort of, I was going to say I have a love-hate relationship, but you know, every day is Safer Internet Day as far as I'm concerned. But it is great that we have this moment in time where we come together, and it was good that this year we're talking about an internet we can trust. And I know we've got some questions coming up about that later on. But clearly this whole point about a safe internet has never been more front of mind, I guess, for parents, with the amount of time that our kids are spending with technology. I know that this has long been an area of interest and sort of passion for parents, Owen, about how to get this right. Is that something that you see, Vicky? You know, are we seeing a big sort of spike in concern about parental controls and all that sort of stuff at this moment in time?
I think what we are seeing, and it's kind of inevitable because we're all spending so much more time online, and that means that bad actors, to use a horrible expression, but it means that bad actors are spending more time online as well. And so there are amplified risks. You know, all this extra time brings extra risks. But I think the balance that we have to strike is that the opportunity is there too. The opportunity is even greater, and the importance of the tech is even greater. So I think what parents are trying to grapple with is, with all that opportunity, and we want our kids to be prepared for the future, but we want them to be safe. And there are real, genuine concerns and real, genuine harms that are happening to children every day online, and we need to do our best to reduce them.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you want to get into this, Vicky? Do you want to start with sort of the layers that we have to think about in all of this, or are there sort of specific areas that you just want to jump straight into?
Can I just jump straight in, Dave? Can I just ask you the questions, the things that, you know, we've got kids at home that are using different devices, mobile phones, their parents' laptop, their big brother's old tablet, whatever it might be. And I think parents want to know, what can you do to set them up as safely as possible? And, you know, is any of it worth the time and the trouble? So first of all, here we go. Parental controls. What are they? Should you use them? Could you not just add the settings to the router? I've heard about whole home solutions, very hard to say. Do they work on all devices? Why are there so many? What do they do? Tell us. Explain, Dave. So
look, I mean, this is really challenging because it's so, in a way it's so complicated, but in a way it's not, right? So if you think about the access that your child has to the internet, and so you laid out a load of great examples, right? So number one, there's the device that they use, and that could be their device, it could be your device, it could be a device that's in the home, it could be a device at school, in the library, a device they've borrowed from their mate, all that sort of stuff. So they've got device level. Then you've got sort of what I would call the local area network. Sorry, I'm a techie, but that means the network that's in your house, the wiring that's in your house, and you're responsible for that wiring. Typically, it starts with your router, and that's the little box that brings the internet to your house. So, you know, you will probably connect your telephone line to that little box, and then it will broadcast the internet around your home. So we've got devices, and then we've got your local area network. And then you've got the internet. Now, the internet comes to your home from your internet service provider. So that is, would be BT, Vodafone, PlusNet, whole range of different people. It doesn't stop there. Because so we've got devices, we've got local area network, we've got wide area network, and then you've got the services themselves. So things like Google, Facebook, TikTok, all of those things. And as a parent, you have to think at all of those levels. So you could say, do you know what, I'll do it at the device level. Well, the problem with doing it at the device level, because that then assumes that your child is only ever going to use that device that you've thought that they're going to use. And we all know that that's probably not the case. And what I should probably say up front, Vicky, is let's be really careful here. It's really easy to put all kids into one block, but there is I think you guys have a phrase, there's an age and stage thing here. So we need to think more thoughtfully about this for younger kids, and there's a different approach maybe for kids as they get older, and that's really down to parenting style. We'll talk a bit about that. So device level doesn't work because your kids are going to use multiple devices, and they're going to have access to devices that you don't have control over. They're going to use devices at school or in the library or wherever. Then there's your network. Now, you can do things at your network, and sometimes that's a good thing to do. It does depend on your router. So you have to have access to your router. So you'll need your name and password. It's probably stuck on a label underneath your router if you haven't already changed it. And within your router, you might have access to some changes. And this is where it starts to get challenging. So you can put a family filter in, but whose rules are you going to use? The router will know about, have a definition of what family safe means that will have been set by somebody. Could have been the router manufacturer, could have been your ISP, could have been some government regulation legislation. If you remember, we had to have a family safe internet a few years ago for the ISPs to subscribe to. But that will only deal with certain services. It won't deal with everything. So again, it's a baseline that you can put in. And then you go to the ISP, the WAN and the wide area. So you've got ISP level. That's up to them whether they decide to offer you family safety or not. Some of the ISPs will do that. They'll say, yeah, look, if you want family settings, they're either switched on by default, and so you have to phone us up to take them off, or you have to talk to us and get them to switch on. Again, the limitations there are you can't account for everything. And I'll come back to that point, or actually probably comes into this point now, which is the providers. So Google and Facebook and TikTok and all those sorts of guys, the website that you've never heard of that is your daughter's Tamagotchi, sort of fixation for the whatever period that, when they sort of, I don't know, all kids go through these little phases of what they're really interested to, and whatever they're interested, I guarantee you there are a plethora of websites out there with some good content on and some bad content on. So the picture I'm trying to say is that there's all of these permutations, and as a parent trying to create something that is 100% infallible, or is perfect for the protection, the level of protection that you want for your family, is really hard. And it's a moving target. It's a full-time job, and it's quite a technical job too to be able to do that. And I'm not trying to scare you off from doing that. There are some really basic, easy things that you can do, and I'll come back to those in a minute. But what I am trying to say is for you to be able to, in your eyes, adequately manage the risk, you can't rely on the technology. You have to address this problem with a range of solutions. It's a multifaceted problem that requires a set of different solutions. So a bit of it's technology, turn the filters on where they're easy and where they're obvious. So if you have got younger kids and they only use, a specific device, well, of course you can turn that on, or you can put that on at your router level, your local area network. That's a really great thing to do. But as your kids get older, what I would really advise is it's really about your relationship with your kids, and it's about how you talk to them and how you empower them to be able to process and deal with the things that they will come in contact with in real life. And that's probably the wrong phrase, but what I mean by that is in their lives, whether it's online or offline, our children are going to come into contact things that we probably would rather that they didn't. We'd rather keep them away. And their ability to thrive really depends on their ability to know what to do when those moments happen, to know how to process them, to know who to talk to know where to go, and to know that they should either click through or move on or whatever it might be. And that's really the conversation. I'm going to close with a semi-perfect analogy, and then I'm going to shut up and let you come in with because I know you'll have a bunch of questions. But I was looking to that. I read about this case study from a while ago, and there's this wonderful guy called John Adams, who is a professor at University College in London, and he spends a lot of time thinking about risk. And he spent a few decades looking at all of the statistics about road accidents and was analysing basically from the beginning of when a country said that now mandated that seatbelts were now law and everybody had to wear a seatbelt. What was the impact on that on road deaths? And what he found, to his amazement, and I guess he probably knew it was going to be there, so not amazement, but what he found to prove his point, was that if you look on aggregate, the number of road deaths didn't change in the countries that had mandated the use of seatbelts for years. Now, why do you think that is? Well, what happens is we don't deal with risk as humans in a really sort of narrow, in an isolated way. We deal with risk as a total system. So, for example, what was happening in cars is that whilst the number of driver deaths had decreased, the number of pedestrian deaths had increased. Because the scenario is the driver gets in, is feeling much safer. They've got ABS, they've got a seatbelt on, they've got airbags, and so they tend to take more risks as drivers, causing more accidents, impacting more people. And he brilliantly ends this sort of research by saying, look, if you really want to get drivers to be safe, your safety device needs to be either a 6-inch metal spike on the steering wheel, right? Or some explosives on the bumper of the car. Because let me tell you, if you're going to drive around looking at you're going to be careful and safe, right? And whilst it's not a perfect analogy, the thing for me, as a parent, we can't afford to sit back and say, well, I've got family controls on, so I don't need to worry about anything. I don't need to have a conversation with my kids. I don't need to think about anything because I've got the technology and it's family controlled. That's what I'm trying to paint a picture of. We just can't do that because it doesn't work like that. So it is about this holistic solution that pivots mostly about the relationship you share with your kids as it does the technology itself. Now, look, that's a big monologue from me, Vicky. Help me out and tell me where we can add a bit more clarity.
I absolutely love that risk analogy. Before I ask you more questions that hopefully will unpick a little bit of that really complicated ecosystem that you've laid out for us. But we did a lot of research, and you'll know this. We've done lots of work around resilience. And one of the things about resilience is that a reliance on tools to fix a problem actually decreases a child's resilience. And it's that same kind of thing, isn't it? If you give a false sense of security or a promise that cannot be achieved through technology, what you're actually doing inadvertently is making your child riskier, making your child less resilient, which is not what any parent wants. But okay, it's complicated, really complicated ecosystem. I think, therefore, that I understand the attraction of some of these third-party controls. So I'm thinking about things that you can buy, that you actually spend your hard-earned parental money on, that offer filtering and parental software. So what do you think to those? Is it worth buying a third-party solution? Do they help?
They can do, Vicky, but not all the time. And again, no technology, even the ones that you pay good money for, is 100% perfect. You know, most of them aren't even 80% perfect because, again, the complications, number one, the internet evolves. So new services will appear that, you know, aren't known about. So we can't protect about those. Sometimes existing services get used in unusual ways or novel ways that actually bypass all of the control. So there's another challenge there. However, there are certain services that provide a great blanket baseline that do work quite well. And you know, I mean, I'll tell you now, we use, as a family, we use OpenDNS, which costs $20 a year and is essentially a crowdsourced blacklist of bad sites for all sorts of things that I'm just, as a family, I'm not interested in, and it's drugs and things like that, and a very broad spectrum of things. And I don't rely on it, religiously. I don't think, well, I've got OpenDNS, so we don't need to do anything. I don't have to have a conversation with my son or anything. It gives me just a little baseline to know that actually I'm headed in the right direction. I have had to, over years, and you will have all had this as parents. I remember, one of John's interests when he was young was countdown, right? So he just loved the countdown clock and all that sort of stuff. And as he got older and he'd go to YouTube and he would look at, episodes of countdown. And you can imagine YouTube is filled with episodes of countdown. And then the funny time when countdown spelled out a rude word. And Daddy, what does that? Well, okay, that's a word that we're not going to do. So it is again into this sort of parenting thing. The other thing, and I'm probably going to get sacked from my religious order now, but there's a little trick, and I don't know, what you'll feel about this, Vicky, but one of the things we used to do in the IT world, and remember, this is a world of, have you tried turning it off and on? No, okay. We used to, I remember, I was there in the office at the dawn of email. And one of the concerns was that email would be abused by members of our staff. So what could we do about that? What we did is that we just used to tell people that, so you do know that we can read all of your emails. We at a server level, the IT guys, we can read all of your emails. Really? And of course, like in a million years, right? No one's going to read their emails. Yeah. And of course, this is the days before GDPR and all that sort of stuff. And then secondly, when the internet came, we did exactly the same. We were worried about people going to websites that they shouldn't at work. And like, you do know that we get a log of all of now, even though it was completely untrue, it was just enough to nudge people in, well, they might be looking. And certainly I may have done this in the past. You do know that we know what websites you go to, so you can do that without doing it. If that's the level of control that you want to exert, if you want to nudge people in the right behaviour. Like I say, I'm probably going to be sacked from the religious order of IT professionals for having disclosed that inner sanctum secret. But I felt it was worth the risk.
I can't believe that. It does remind me though of that parent magic thing where I used to be able to say to my son, I know what you ate that chocolate biscuit, and I would have absolutely no way of knowing that he'd actually eaten the chocolate biscuit, but he would fess up instantly and say, no, I didn't eat the chocolate biscuit, but I have eaten, the packet of crisps that you told me not to have. So it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? Okay, filters are complicated, but they can give you a bit of a baseline, and sometimes it's worth investing a little bit of money in a third party if that's what you want to do, and if you feel that getting into your router might be a tech step too far for you. But something that we hear a lot about is the many and wonderful ways that kids find around these controls if you have gone to the trouble of setting them up. One of my favourite stories actually is doing a talk in a school, and I was chatting to the kids afterwards, and the school had said to me, we've got these fantastic filters and we do this and we do that and we know everything that they're doing. And the kids said, oh no, we just use a free Wi-Fi that the bank provides and you can get onto it from our classroom. So actually, they say that. But so talk to me about VPNs. What is a VPN and how do they help children? Why might a child use, or anybody else use one?
Yeah, so VPNs have become popular for a couple of reasons. So VPN stands for a virtual private network. And what that means, if you could imagine me having a connection inside a connection. So I'm connected to you right now, but I could create a new connection that is completely secure. It's encrypted so that even though we're passing down the same telephone line, you don't know where I'm going or what content is being processed. Now, we've used them in the world of work for years because one of the things we wanted to do at work is we wanted to be able to use the cheap internet to be able to have secure communications with our offices around the world rather than having to buy expensive lines that were only available and secure to us. So VPNs have been around for work for a long time. They've become popular recently, and it's a little bit controversial. If you want to, for example, access content that's not available in your geography, so you want to watch an American TV show that's only on an American network, some people will buy a VPN that terminates in the States. So it makes them look as if they've come from the USA rather than from the UK, and allows them to access the content that someone who is based in the USA could use. So they've become a little bit more popular as a result of that. They also, are more, if you're really worried about security and you're dealing with things that are, you want to keep secret, then people will use them. But for the most part, they're not something that you would want to use on an everyday basis. So I think if you're in a situation where your kids are asking to use VPNs, that would be a cue for me to have a conversation about, it's really interesting. Why would you do that? Now, I know that there are good legitimate reasons. I tell you from personal experience, there are certain network games that in order to play, you have to create a VPN between, the players. So I've certainly had that conversation, with John, we've set that up and worked it all through. But there are a handful of reasons why that would be normal. Most of it would be a bit sort of odd. And it's people trying to, subvert the network to be able to do the things they want to without being detected. And you're either doing that for good reasons because you've got some material that's meant to be secure, or you're doing that because you're trying to access content and you don't really want other people to know that you're doing it.
That is a super tip. And I'm guessing, we're probably talking now to parents who've got slightly older children. This feels like the sort of teenager that might have the tech savvy to think there's a way around that. But the message is, if your child is asking about a VPN, or if you see that they've got a VPN installed, you ought to be talking to them about why they're using it.
Yeah. And the frustrating thing for me, Vicky, is many of the the sort of the laws that surround why people would use this. Let's take my scenario. Let's say there's a TV show that's come out in the States that I'm desperate to see, and it's not coming to a UK service for ages or ever. And all my mates have watched it and they've all done it, and I can get a VPN from the App Store, and some of it's free, sometimes you have to pay. So there's lots of pressure. The problem with all of that is actually not so much that kids want to use the VPN, it's and this is massively outside of our scope, Vicky, I do understand. It's this sort of prehistoric legislation and regulation that means that I can't watch a TV show that's been released in America, and I have to wait for it to hit, be licensed in the UK. That stuff, it goes back to a pre-internet world. And if we could update that, I mean, the irony for me is that the content providers would actually make money hand over fist if they could offer content to the people who are interested to watch it. This is how they work, right? So I do understand. I empathize with people who, if you're using VPNs to do that kind of thing, I do empathize, and it's just the fact that we haven't really caught up with the digital world yet. But that's probably the one example where it kind of makes sense from that perspective.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think so much of what we do, and I think what we're trying to convey to parents, is that we are still in this situation where the offline world sometimes has some real, what's the word I'm searching for? There's a bit of grit in the oyster, that it's not quite married up with the online world yet. So we don't have the social norms, we don't have the rules always, and that's what makes it hard.
But also I think we paint a much rosier picture of the real world than is actually true. And also we hold technology to account. Like from an IT perspective, I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with people who are like, and they expect the IT to be 100% secure, and they mean 100%. And I'm like, dude, nothing in life is 100% secure. I can't, the technology is no different to anything else. And it just reminds me of an example, and it's a cultural difference, right? So we were very lucky to spend about 5 years in Canada, and just, what a wonderful country. But the culture there is very different because you've got this time zone issue. So it's easy in the UK, right? Because we've got like the 9 p.m. Threshold, right? And that's the same for everybody. Well, a 9 p.m. threshold for a kid in Toronto is 6 p.m. for a kid in Vancouver. And so the sense of any kind of threat, and of course, you're in Vancouver and you have access to the Eastern TV stations as well. So you can watch stuff at, 3 hours earlier than it's being broadcast, time zone wise. So they deal with it a different way. They don't have that luxury of saying, well, we can rely on the threshold to keep everybody safe. Well, you can't rely on the threshold. So actually, you're going to have to do something else. And that something else is, how do we equip our kids with the resilience to be able to deal with seeing stuff that they perhaps shouldn't, or how to manage that. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just another example of where you can't rely on the technology, and we have to rely on building that resilience in our kids. And it's so important. The other thing that made me think about Vicky was the guys at I'm thinking of Jonathan Bagley. I don't even know if he's still there, but the public health guys, they did such a great job about this different approach to relationships and about maturity in young people that was lacking in our childhood, because it maybe didn't need to be to the same extent and we weren't faced with the same issues. But it's so important to have that on our children's agenda, to have those conversations, to talk to them about what good relationships are about, or what good content is, and how would they feel about that. Those are the things that build the resilience in our kids, that make them be able to deal with this. Because the issue for me is, we can talk about family safety for as much as you like, but all we're doing is we're actually doing harm, because we're scaring people. Why would you, if you listen to all of this, why would you want to engage with technology? It's a bit like, when I was a kid and we had the Green Cross code and the Green Cross man, right? It was like, if you didn't give me a reason to cross the road, why would I bother taking the risk, right? Jesus, I'm going to stay at home, thanks. And so we just got to remember that with our kids. This is their world, and whatever they choose to do, technology is going to be a part of it. So we have to, right now, whatever their age, equip them with the resilience to be able to have healthy, good lives on the basis of all of the spectrum that's out there, and be able to deal with the bad stuff as well as make use of the good stuff as well.
I mean, big shout out for Canada. Not only do they do a fantastic job of resilience in children, they also provide the best parenting support approach that I can think of anywhere in the world. So I'm right with you there. And I'm absolutely loving that somebody who is such a technologist is saying to me, the technology has limits, and the stuff, the safety stuff, the safety technology is not going to be your answer here. But let me ask you, and I know we've got questions that have been asked, so I won't hog all this time asking different techie questions. But what about, I hear a lot, it's all about passwords, screen locks, and I'm like, that's so basic. Does it really matter? Are they really important? They seem so low tech and so simple. Are they really things that parents should be thinking about?
It's really hard, because I think if you're a parent who has a kid who has I'm going to say a problem with technology, who is so into technology, and it might be gaming, it might be social media and all that. And I know that you reach a point where actually these really heavy-handed measures, locking off the technology, become important. So I do really understand that. But I just think if we get to that point, something's gone a bit wrong in our relationship. And I get that there's also this issue, I think we talked about this before on a previous show, is, let's not kid ourselves, right? The job of people who are creating these experiences, from Facebook to Candy Crush to Among Us to whatever it is, their job is to make those experiences not just good, to make them amazing, right? Really good. And it's not just because they all want our advertising, they want advertising revenue, from advertising. They want our eyeballs and our attention. Game developers, they want to deliver a fantastic experience that you will not want. That's their job, right? So I get that that's the sort of thing that we're sort of fighting against. But again, if we're to build long-lasting resilience that will deliver value to our kids for the rest of their lives, it doesn't, you can't do that with those heavy-handed measures. They might work for a short period of time, but I think if you're in a situation where you're having to resort to those, you'll have other issues to face, which will be that your kids will find other ways to go, and it's back to that sort of total view of risk, other ways to access it. So it comes back, and I know it's always so easy for me to sit here and say this, it comes back to building that really close relationship with your kids, and being able to talk to them and have the conversations. Like, you can imagine, for me, I desperately need my son to be at home on the internet. His life is going to be on the internet. He's going to do so many things on the internet. It's going to be his career. It's going to be how he socializes. It's going to be, and not just because he's going to be a nerd like me and just sit in the dark room looking at screens, but that's going to be the catalyst for all of the things that he does in his life. I cannot afford for him to not be able to thrive in that world. And look, I know I'm extreme, and I know it's my world, and I think about these things a lot. But I want that for everybody. I want every kid on the planet to be able to have a really rich, positive relationship with technology that delivers tangible, lasting value right across their lives, whether it's not just at work, but in their personal lives. And we only get there by helping them build the resilience. We don't get there by turning things off and shutting things down and controlling and restricting. We have to take a different approach.
That has been such a fantastic explanation, whistle-stop tour, I guess, of your different options. And I think what I'm taking away from that is use some of the baseline tools if they are going to help you in your family, depending on the ages and stages of your child, but by no means rely on them, because there are ways around them, and they are quite complicated. There isn't one button. There is not one button that you can set up that will do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think, just to build on that, Vicky, my advice to anybody is, if you're reaching a point of frustration with the settings and getting them to work for you, I would argue that you're in the wrong space. And actually, if you're really frustrated about making it work, then look for a different solution, a solution that doesn't revolve around the technology to that extent. The baseline that you talked about, they're really easy to do. It is a simple conversation with your ISP. I'd like you to turn these on, please. It's a setting on your router, or it's a service provider like OpenDNS. Others are available. But if you start getting more than that, and because I know some people, they'll start playing whack-a-mole. Right, I've done the devices, I've done the router, I've had the conversation with the ISP. What else? That's a problem. So those are warning signs for me that the balance is just sort of spinning a little bit differently.
And that is an amazing roundup. I think on and on. I could ask you about controls in apps and turning off in-app purchases. But I think you're right. If you get yourself into a point where you're playing whack-a-mole, you just need to be sensible, don't you? Look at the device, decide what settings you want to put on it, and then know that they'll only do so much.
Yeah, look, I absolutely. I do. You've just raised an issue though, Vicky, that I wanted to get to, and I'm really sorry because I know we've gone on, but one final thing. What we have to appreciate as parents, but also members of this society, is that we are reaching a point where new technology and our society are intersecting in ways that we've never experienced before. So you imagine a life before the internet, and the internet turns up, and now we're presented with societal issues and challenges that we've never encountered before as a society. We have more access to information than ever before, and that means access to good information as well as bad information. And the thing that I would, absolutely call for is what tends to happen is we have a specific issue, and it will be something tragic, like a kid being hurt or worse, and there'll be uproar, and we must do something, and let's hold all of the tech companies to account and all that sort of. And look, that's great. What we should have done before that is have an ongoing dialogue with organisations like yours, Vicky, the relevant parts of government, the tech companies, but also, and this is my plea to you as parents, out there listening to this, with you, because we all have, the tech companies cannot decide what is right or wrong or even moral, right? They're just not in a position to do that. Neither, by the way, is the government. But we rely on NGOs like Parent Zone and all of the other niche providers in the different aspects of our children's lives, and representatives of us parents sat round the same table to say, how would we like this to work? Given this is now possible, what would we like to do? So my lasting ask for everybody is, let's build that forum where we can have these conversations, where we can tell the Microsofts and the Googles of the Facebooks of this world, do you know what? Your service, as brilliant as it is, has created a problem for us. Here's what we'd like to do about this collectively. And I've been, at Microsoft and working closely with Google when those moments have happened, and they're magical. They bring a tear to my eye, because it's exactly what it should be, about preparing a world for where all of us have access to technology that makes our lives better. We maximize the potential for good and we minimize the risk of harm. There endeth the lesson.
And that is exactly the sweet spot, isn't it? That's what we all want to do.
The bit for me is we tend to ask the different people from different organisations, from different parts of government, for every different issue that we have. And so there's never any consistency. And I would love, and we're seeing now with AI is an interesting thing. We're seeing now the rise of the AI ethics officer in companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft. Wouldn't it be great if we had someone at a government level who was going to take responsibility and could then orchestrate bringing in people like you, Vicky, at Parent Zone, or whether it's other, NGOs. So we had some issues that we talked to the Samaritans about, for example, to get some insight on their world. And then, some societal representation. So we could come together and say, look, what is the choice for us? What is the thing? Because no one person can do it alone. We can only do it collectively. What
is the web we want? I seem to remember.
Yeah. There you go.
That's where we need to go.
So on that's been incredibly cathartic, I might add. What's going to be quite bizarre is we're making sort of a quite a weird jump, right? So this is going to feel a little bit trivial, but I would now like to. We're
peripherals now, aren't we?
We're going to do peripherals, and so let me show you some of the
best
gadgets.
What is a peripheral, Dave?
A peripheral.
Tell me what a peripheral is. It's my fence, isn't it?
Is yeah. It is something that is an add-on to your main computer. So your printer, as much, I know you love your printer, Vicky. Your printer is a peripheral. Your mouse is a peripheral. So these are things that are not the computer itself, but are devices that accentuate what it might do for you. Ooh, there you go. So let's take a look at those. Yeah. So this is actually going to be super quick. I've done another video for this that will take you through in more detail, but there are simply 5 peripherals, I think, that completely change the game when it comes to remote schooling, depending on the tools that you've got, the device you've got, and depending on your budget. The first is really super simple. This is a £5 tablet stand. Most people I know who are learning at home on a tablet or a phone don't have one of these. They have a coffee mug or a pillow and spend most of the lessons trying to get the laptop or the tablet, excuse me, not to fall over. These things are really simple. You can put them in front of you, adjust to fit any device, and they just take all of that pain out of your schooling. So that's the first one. The second one, again, if you're at home and you're learning on a tablet or a phone, fantastic if you're younger kids, so Key Stage 1, because that touch interface is absolutely brilliant for that. But as your kids get older, you'll start to notice that they need to spend more time typing, and those virtual keyboards are not really great for that. So what you can add to your tablet is one of these devices. It's a Bluetooth keyboard. Now these are about 15 to 20 quid. They'll work on Android or iOS. It enables you to add a physical keyboard to your tablet, to your phone. This one I actually love. It has a built-in stand for the tablet and phone, so you kind of get two in one. So that's number two. That's pretty easy. Where are we? Number three, a bit weird, this one. This is a wireless display adapter. Now I find myself, this is probably more for parents than it is for the kids. I found myself sometimes, my son will come down, hey Dad, can you just help me with this homework? I'm stuck on this bit of physics or maths or whatever it might be. And Vicky, you'll laugh, but I've reached the age where I'm struggling with my eyesight a bit, so I can't quite see the laptop screen. So this device lets me beam wirelessly whatever he's got on his laptop screen onto the big telly in the living room. So we can actually sit around, me and him, and we can look at his homework on the big screen, and then actually I can talk to him. It's also quite good if he's got an assembly or something that he needs to watch rather than engage with. This is a wireless version. You can get them for about 40 quid, but don't forget you can easily just shove a cable into your phone or your tablet or your laptop. You might need an adapter cable. We call it a dongle, which always makes me smile, but just plug it into your TV. So that ability to put things on the big screen is super helpful. Number four, and there's only one more after this, is really about your audio. So look, you'll have seen these. These are the sort of classic sort of headsets that gamers wear. They're really good. They're good for a couple of reasons. One, they're a bit more comfortable, and by that I don't mean physically, but more about audibly comfortable. If you're spending all day in lessons on Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, having your kid with a headset is great. It's also brilliant if you're all trying to work in the same space and you're all competing for the same kind of noise level. So they're pretty good. The one that really pushes it out of the boat on the same thing is one of these. Now these are basically speakerphones that you plug into your computer, or they work on Bluetooth. And one of the things that I find, even just for me at work, but I've also noticed with my son, is when you're listening to lessons all the time, it's much more tiring than actually being in the classroom. What this device does is it just makes that listening and the talking, your sort of output and input, a lot more audible. So there's better speakers in this, there's a better microphone, so you don't have to have it blasting out, you can hear more clearly, and also most importantly, when you speak, there's a better microphone here than the one in your tablet or your phone or your laptop. And also brilliantly, it has a physical mute button. I can't tell you the number of times that's come in handy when I've needed to put things on mute. And then the final thing, and this for me is kind of the pièce de résistance, because it is, do you remember we talked about write-on devices? The thing about write-on devices is they're typically very expensive. This is what you can do if you don't want to buy an expensive write-on device. This is a tablet. They're about 60 quid. They'll work on your Chromebook, they'll work on your laptop, and you'll work on your desktop PC, but they'll enable you to, if you're doing maths or physics or anything that needs an equation, or if you've got early years kids and they're doing their handwriting, it just enables your kid to be able to write on a surface and see it on the screen in front. Now, look, there's a little bit of eye-hand coordination that's involved, so it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, the best bit about this is you can start to complete all of those worksheets digitally. So you get sent the maths worksheet, and again, I've done in the video just to show you how that works. You can complete it. You don't need to print anything out. It's all there and ready for you. So look, they're the 5 things that actually, they are all, by the way, tried and tested in the Coplin household. We've done almost 12 months of remote schooling now. They've all been used. They're all a fundamental part of how we're using technology to make that experience better for us. And if I've missed any, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us what I've missed. What are the devices, the peripherals that you've been using that make a difference in what you're doing? Tell us in the chat or add them in the comments if you're watching this on catch up. That would be fantastic. Right, Vicky, let's go back to our Q&A, and then I think we're more or less done. I felt like I was on the shopping channel then.
I absolutely love that though. I suppose, what did you call the one that you could project something onto a bigger screen? What was that called?
Yeah, it's called a wireless display adapter, and they go by lots of
That's
different
a sexy
names.
name, Dave.
Yeah. But if you have a Chromecast or a Amazon Fire, you can broadcast your browser. You can send your browser to your screen. That wireless one I showed you, bizarrely, is called a Microsoft display adapter. It's got nothing to do with Microsoft really, but with Windows you can stream wirelessly to those devices. So and they're 35 quid, which and look, I know it's 35 quid, but it made a big difference to us. But it's these are the things that people don't necessarily think of. And to your point earlier, it's lots of people don't know about the fact that I can buy a little tablet that will enable me to write on worksheets, or that there's things like a tablet stand which just make a huge amount of difference.
Yeah, absolutely genius. Little things are not huge investments. I mean, as you say, £35 is still £35, but much cheaper than buying some of the write-on devices.
Well, and that was the point for me, is a good write-on device is about 1,000 quid. And sometimes then some, and I just think that's unfair. It's great if you can afford that, absolutely brilliant, but there are lots of kids who need that ability, and that's a really great way of getting access to that without having to fork out all that cash.
Love it.
Vicky, let's go to our Q&A, and I know that we are probably running a bit long, but Bethany in Derbyshire is talking about untrustworthy things online. How do I help my children understand what they're looking at, and if what they're reading or watching can be trusted? And this is really, I guess, in response to Safer Internet Day, which was all about building a trusted internet.
This is a really tricky one, actually. And one of the reasons it's trickier than people think is because we sometimes teach old-fashioned methods of checking information that we use in the offline spaces, things like, cross-referencing whether it's got good sources, for example, and we apply those to the online spaces. And actually people who are deliberately putting out misinformation are really, really good at making sure that they are touching all those buttons to make sure that their information looks as though it's come from credible sources. So they will reference universities and they'll reference, research. So the thing to do is to make sure that your child has multiple different sources, that they're not just relying on one, they're not just looking at Wikipedia for their homework, that you point them to what are reliable sources, whether that's NHS or BBC Bitesize or any of those places that you absolutely know are reliable, and that you talk to them about what they're seeing and you dissect it. Do we know that to be truthful? Has it been published anywhere? You really help them to develop those critical thinking skills.
Yeah, I love that. I want to just add to that briefly, Vicky, with a little story, because I think that some of this is about we're used to old ways of doing this, and so the people who want us to believe things are trying to subvert that, so showing us things in a way that we like to. But the flip side of that is some of the newer places that are trustworthy aren't trusted because they're new. And I just had this great conversation with my son's English teacher. This is a few years ago, who, he came home from school one day and he was a bit upset because in his English homework, he'd referenced Wikipedia. And his English teacher had said to him, well, John, how do you know you can trust Wikipedia? Which is a great question, right? And so he was a bit concerned about that, because obviously you can imagine our house technology is king. And so, well, Dad, but, I said, well, look, just go in tomorrow, and when you see her, say, but Miss, how do I know I can trust my English teacher? Which he did. And he got detention for that. But we all learnt a valuable lesson, I felt. So, but look, the point is that conversation that you talk about, that's where you build the skills. That's where you build the resilience. How do you know that to be true? Where else could we go to find that out? That's the conversation. So I think that's a great question. Building on that, Graham from Northumberland is asking about phishing, and that's phishing with a PH rather than an F. What are the telltale signs? Now, one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know about you, Vicky, but to your point, the bad actors of this world, terrible phrase, are quite active because they're recognizing that lots of people are online, and certainly lots of people who aren't normally online are online. So there's lots of emails about your HMRC job retention, or your account expiring, or any number of different things that quite often sound too good to be true. And there's your first clue, right? So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is not true. The second thing is, I always really, and it's difficult in a world where you're only ever on your phone, but I always will try and get people to go to their computer if they have one and look at those emails there, because what you can do on a computer that's harder to do on a phone or a tablet is you can hover your mouse over the link in the email. And what you'll often find in a bad email is that those links have got nothing to do with the topic of the email. So you'll get an email from a bank saying that you've won 10,000 quid, and you hover over the link, and the link has no relation to the bank that they're talking about. The third thing to check is always bad English. For some reason, bad actors are also bad spellers, and they're terrible with grammar. And it's always a great clue. If something doesn't quite scan right, then again, it's probably not from someone you think. And then the final thing that you can do, you should always, especially if you use a service like Gmail or Outlook, like a sort of a network, an internet-based email service, just report those things. When they come in, you say, this is spam. And the reason why that's important is that gives Google and Microsoft a little signal. And when they get enough of those signals, they say, actually, do you know what? We've had a lot of these emails from Dave telling us that our accounts have expired. I think Dave's a bad actor, and so I'm going to automatically put that in the spam for you. There's also a government service. There's a report at phishing.gov.uk. They do the same thing. They'll compile a list, they'll add it to the suppliers, and they build it. So play your part if you can, and just, it's easy to do, report those back.
That's a fantastic, you're going to make me regret introducing that phrase, aren't you? Bad actors.
I can think of a few bad actors.
The National Cybersecurity Centre, I think, and I'm sure we'll provide a link somewhere, and I know there's information on our website, but it's a really good place to go to check if you're not sure about something.
Yeah, actually, that's a great shout out. And Sophie's just put that up in the chat. We'll put it in the comments as well. Those guys do a great thing across the board for cybersecurity. So love those. Look, final question is Anna from Essex. Her daughter's 12 and keeps asking if she can use a platform called Discord to connect with friends while she's not in school. What's Discord, and what do I need to know?
I am going to, partly in the interest of time, say we've got a fantastic guide to Discord on Parents' Own website. Do go and have a look at it. What you really need to know about it is that it's a chat platform that was designed to connect gamers, and they can chat in chat, by voice and by video calls. And because it's in private chat rooms, you have to be invited into them. There are all the risks that go alongside being in those private spaces. They can be fantastic, nicely connected friendship groups, but there's also the potential for bullying and other bad behaviour. But really, Discord is a platform that, go and investigate a bit more about it, and we've got a fantastic guide to on Parents' Own that will help you with that.
There's something nicely symmetrical about this question, because I think it brings us back. It's very similar to the family safety settings. Discord's actually a really wonderful, it will be a big part of many children's social network, but it comes with lots of challenges and risks. It's all about that relationship, that conversation that you share. I can also see that Sophie's posted a link to the Discord article on the chat, which is fantastic. So look, let's wrap things up, Vicky. We've got a really interesting conversation again next week, because it's half term. And I know you were quite keen to talk about how we help people juggle, work and school, remote school, but now also no school. So anything that you want to add on that?
No, except to say that we're being joined by Simon Harris, aren't we, from Man Behaving Dadly, which is
brilliant.
Just too brilliant to be true. It's absolutely fantastic. Talking about how he's, juggling all of that homeschooling. And I'm going to be really interested to hear actually whether or not half term is a welcome break from the routine and the kind of grindstone, or whether actually some of the structure that you get from homeschooling is making life a bit easier. So that's what I'm looking forward to next week, finding out how half term's going.
Yeah, me too. So look, that's next week. Let me remember what else we've got to do. Actually, it's pretty simple, and I'm going to do it from here to save time. Don't forget, as always, we're here to help. So send your questions in if you have them to info@parentzone.org.uk, or in the chat, or on the hashtag Remote Schooling SOS. We hope you're enjoying these shows. We're certainly getting a lot out of them. Subscribe if you haven't. Give us a like if you've enjoyed it. If you don't, let us know in the comments and we'll try and fix it. That's it from me. Thanks, Vicky. Brilliant as always to see you.
Great to see you too. Perfect wrap up there. I love the little animation at the bottom.
I've been working hard, you see. That's my skills at work. So, all right, look, well, we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thanks for joining us.